Picture this. You're sitting around a fire thousands of years ago. The flames dance in the darkness, casting shadows on the cave walls. An elder begins to speak, and everyone leans in closer. They're not just telling a story for entertainment, they're passing down the keys to survival, meaning, and identity itself. This is where myth begins. Not in dusty books or academic lectures, but in the human need to understand our world and our place in it. So, what exactly is a myth? Here's what myth is not. It's not a synonym for lie or false belief. When someone says, "That's just a myth," they usually mean it's untrue. But that's a modern misunderstanding that completely misses the point. A myth is a traditional story, typically involving supernatural beings or events, that a culture uses to explain fundamental truths about existence. These aren't random fairy tales. They're the operating system of ancient civilizations. Think of the Greek myth of Persephone, dragged into the underworld by Hades. On the surface, it's a dramatic kidnapping story with gods and magic pomegranates. But dig deeper. It's explaining why seasons exist, why crops die and return, why mothers grieve when daughters leave home. One story, multiple layers of meaning. Myths operate on what scholars call symbolic truth rather than literal truth. When Zeus hurls lightning bolts from Mount Olympus, ancient Greeks weren't thinking, "Yes, there's literally a bearded man on that mountain throwing electric spears." They understood these stories as profound metaphors for natural forces and human psychology. The power of myth lies in its flexibility. The same story can mean different things to different people at different times. A warrior might see a tale of Achilles as inspiration for courage in battle. A philosopher might read it as a warning about pride and mortality. A parent might use it to teach their child about making difficult choices. But here's where it gets really interesting. Myths aren't fiction in the way we understand fiction today. Modern fiction, novels, movies, TV shows, we all know is made up. We enjoy the story, but we're fully aware it's invented entertainment. Myths were different. The people who told them and heard them believed these stories revealed genuine truths about reality. When a Greek said, "Zeus is the king of the gods," they weren't speaking metaphorically or ironically. They meant it. When a Roman performed a sacrifice to Mars before battle, they genuinely expected divine intervention. These weren't symbolic gestures, they were practical actions based on their understanding of how the universe worked. This is crucial to understand. Myth was their science, their psychology, their history, and their religion all rolled into one. Why do storms happen? Zeus is angry. Why do we fall in love irrationally? Aphrodite's arrows. Why do civilizations rise and fall? The gods favor or punish mortals. Myth provided a comprehensive framework for understanding literally everything. Now, you might be thinking, okay, but we have science now. We know storms are meteorological phenomena, not divine temper tantrums. Why should we care about myths? This brings us to the second question. Why is myth? Why does it matter, especially today? First, let's acknowledge something uncomfortable. We haven't outgrown myth. We've just renamed it. Look at modern superhero movies. They're pulling billions at the box office. Why? Because they're myths in new clothing. Superman is Hercules. Batman is Odysseus using cunning instead of strength. The Avengers are the Olympian pantheon fighting cosmic threats. Same archetypal stories, different special effects budget. Or consider national myths. Every country has them. America has its founding fathers and the myth of manifest destiny. France has the Revolution and Joan of Arc. These aren't lies, they're symbolic narratives that give citizens shared identity and purpose. They simplify complex history into powerful stories that unite people. Even our personal lives run on myth. The self-made man who pulled himself up by his bootstraps. the soulmate who completes us, the idea that hard work always leads to success. These are mythic narratives we use to make sense of our individual journeys, even when reality is far messier. But myths do something even more profound. They deal with the questions science can't answer. Science can tell us how things work. Evolution explains how humans developed. Physics explains how the universe operates. But science doesn't tell us what these things mean. It doesn't tell us how to live a good life, how to face death, how to find purpose in suffering. Myths tackle exactly these questions. The myth of Prometheus stealing fire from the gods? It's exploring the price of progress, the relationship between humanity and divine authority, the burden of knowledge. No scientific equation can capture that complexity. The story of Orpheus trying to rescue his wife from the underworld. It's about grief, love, the impossibility of reversing death, and human stubbornness in the face of cosmic rules. These are eternal human experiences that need stories, not formulas. Myths also preserve cultural memory in ways history books cannot. Historical records tell us dates, battles, treaties. Myths tell us what people felt about those events, what those events meant to them. The Trojan War probably happened in some form around 1200 BCE, but Homer's Iliad isn't valuable because it's an accurate war chronicle. It's valuable because it captures Greek ideals about honor, glory, fate, and the tragedy of war in a way no factual account ever could. Think about it. We remember ancient cultures primarily through their myths. Egyptian civilization lasted 3,000 years, but what do most people know about it? The myths of Osiris, Isis, and Ra. Greek city-states rose and fell, but their myths have outlived their empires by millennia. Here's perhaps the deepest reason myths matter. They map the human psyche. Carl Jung argued that myths are expressions of the collective unconscious, universal patterns and archetypes that all humans share regardless of culture. The hero's journey appears in myths worldwide because it mirrors the psychological journey from childhood to maturity. The dying and rising god appears across cultures because it reflects our awareness of cycles, death and rebirth, loss and renewal. When you read Greek myths, you're not just learning about ancient religion. You're reading a sophisticated map of human psychology created over centuries. The gods represent different aspects of human nature. Athena is wisdom, Ares is aggression, Aphrodite is desire, Apollo is order, Dionysus is chaos. These aren't just characters, they're personifications of forces within all of us. The Greeks understood something profound. Humans aren't unified, rational beings. We're bundles of conflicting drives and desires. Sometimes Athena wins and we make wise choices. Sometimes Ares takes over and we lash out in anger. The gods are fighting on Mount Olympus, and they're fighting inside us too. Myths also do something unique. They hold contradictions without resolving them. Modern thinking loves either or, science or religion, fact or fiction, true or false. But myths operate in the both-and territory. They're true and made up, historical and fictional, literal and symbolic. Is the story of Pandora's box true? Yes and no. Did a literal woman open a literal box, releasing literal evil into the world? Probably not. But does the story capture something true about human curiosity, consequences, and hope persisting despite suffering? Absolutely. This ability to hold paradox makes myths incredibly sophisticated tools for exploring reality's complexity. Life isn't neat. Morality isn't simple. Myths reflect that ambiguity in ways that rigid ideologies cannot. Finally, myths matter because they're still shaping us, whether we realize it or not. Our legal systems echo divine justice from ancient myths. Our psychology uses terms like Oedipus complex and narcissism, taken directly from Greek stories. Our art, literature, and film constantly reference and reimagine these ancient tales. Our very language is saturated with mythology. We talk about Achilles' heels, Pandora's boxes, Herculean tasks. Even our atheism and secularism are, in some ways, reactions against myth. You can't fully reject something without understanding what you're rejecting. So here's the bottom line. Myths are humanity's first and most enduring attempt to answer the big questions. Where did we come from? Why are we here? How should we live? What happens when we die? What is good? What is evil? What does it mean to be human? They're not primitive superstition we've outgrown. They're sophisticated cultural technologies developed over millennia to encode wisdom, preserve memory, explore psychology, and create meaning. When you study classical mythology, you're not learning about what some ancient people wrongly believed. You're accessing a treasure trove of human insight about love, power, jealousy, ambition, fate, freedom, mortality, and transcendence. These stories have survived thousands of years not because they're factually accurate, but because they're psychologically true. They speak to something deep and permanent in human nature. And that's why, in our next episode, we're going to dive into one of the most powerful creation myths ever told, the Greek story of how the universe began. Not with a big bang, but with something far stranger and more profound. Because before there were gods, before there was earth or sky, before there was anything at all, first, there was chaos.
The past holds infinite secrets. Please hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, and activate notifications to join us on every new journey between myth and history.